Welcome to my garden. I'm Gardener John. So I want to talk a little bit about heritage. You know, farming and gardening is something that I've done partially because my parents gardened, but also because I grew up visiting my grandfather's farm. And you know, on my dad's side, my grandmother and grandfather were farmers, and on my mom's side, they were teachers. But if you go back one more generation, all of my great-grandparents were farmers, all of them. And for a lot of us, no matter where we come from, no matter the color of our skin, if you go back a generation or two, we all come from farmers and gardeners. And so when I talk about heritage and gardening, this is something that's for everybody, not just for people with big farms, but even for people with small yards. I'll say one more thing about heritage. The land and the earth itself is our heritage, and we need a lot of gardeners to take care of it. So let's go check out some plants that our ancestors might have grown. Come on. This is a very common weed called lamb's quarter. But another way to think of it is wild quinoa. It really is almost exactly the same plant, and we know that the first gardeners in this area used lamb's quarter seed for an important food source. But it's funny that some of the things that we call weeds in our gardens were food plants for the people that gardened here for probably over 1,000 years. Squash. This was also a very important crop for the people who lived here before we came, the Native Americans. And these are some squash that I picked earlier today. And this is a yellow summer squash. And this summer squash is called a patty pan. And I think KidsCook did something with zucchini, right? You would use these just like zucchini. Zucchini is a summer squash. And this is a yellow crookneck, and this is actually a squash that was grown here before my ancestors came, before the Europeans came. And we still grow it today because it's got such great eating qualities. Of weeds and food, this plant, which is a weed in many people's gardens, is called purslane. And it's a terrible weed for me, but it may be the healthiest thing that I grow in my gardens. It's really high in omega-3 fatty acids, and in a lot of places this is something that you might find at like a farmer's market, right? But it's something that people cook with, although Americans don't generally. You won't find this at your local Hy-Vee or Walmart. Some other squash are the winter squash, and that's a winter squash that most people are familiar with. Is called a pumpkin. I think everybody knows what a pumpkin is, right? And it's too early to have any ripe pumpkins right now, but you can see I've got a little pumpkin that's just starting to turn orange right here. This is my favorite variety, and it's a secret. Oh, look at that pumpkin. There's one that hasn't started to turn yet. But this kind of squash is called butternut. And again, these kinds of squash were something that Native Americans would have used a lot. So I grow lots of different kinds of peppers. This is a hot pepper. I believe this one is from Thailand. I grow lots of sweet peppers. And one thing that people don't know about peppers is that they start out green and they turn red. So you can see right here on the plant that this is an unripe pepper. And this is a pepper that's ripening, just like a tomato. In fact, it's in the same family. So you can leave, like with tomatoes, you could take a pepper that's starting to turn like this on your counter for a few days and it'll turn redder and redder and get sweeter and sweeter, just like a tomato. So, and we were talking about squash. So there's a family of plants called cucurbits. And if you think about cucurbits, it starts like, what vegetable starts with C-U-C? Anybody?
Cucumbers.
Cucumbers, right? So cucumber family, think of that. And cucumbers grow on what? Vines, long vines. And so anytime you see something that has a lot of vines, that's probably a cucurbit, right? So if you look here, I'm surrounded by vines, a couple different kinds. So we were talking about winter squash. These are squash that you can grow into the winter. And this is a butternut that is ripe and ready to cook. Another thing that we're growing here, you'll notice there's a couple different kinds of leaves. There are those, and then there are these. These are melons. Melons are also a cucurbit, but they have a very different look. So we're going to go in and see if we can find a watermelon. We're in the middle of the melon patch, which is one of my favorite places to be in the summer. And melons are something that people have grown for thousands of years all over the world. And one of the tricks with melons is to see if they're ripe. The first thing I look for is that at the end of the stem, there's a little curlicue. And if that's dried up, a lot of times that means that the melon is ripe. And then another thing I'll do is I'll thump it. And if there's a good hollow sound, it might be ripe. I'm honestly not sure. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut it and harvest it, and we'll take it to a table and see if it's ripe. I think it's gonna be a good one. All right, so when you pick a melon, you're never really sure if it's gonna be a good one. So this is a good sign. See how this is kind of orange here? Kind of an orangish yellow. And again, we talked about the other signs and the thump test. So you know a melon's really ripe if it kind of splits on its own when you start. I don't think it's quite that ripe, but we'll see. Nope, not that. Close though. Hey, that's a good melon. Let's eat.
We're going to try this.
All right, let's see.
Melon
The moment of truth.
Yeah, that's good. They're good. Is it true if I eat a watermelon seed that a watermelon will grow in my stomach? I don't know. I don't think it's true though.
All right, thanks for visiting. Bye-bye. Well, I'm sure glad you and Desi could visit, and glad I could share a little watermelon.
Oh, it was so good.
Is there something growing out of your ear? Oh no, Grace. Grace, you didn't eat a watermelon seed, did you?
I ate a watermelon seed. Desi said it was okay.
Oh no!